Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to the Consented Narrative. This month's book to film adaptation is Jurrasic Park. Now, it was released in 1990 and then it was adapted to film in 1993. Now, I'll be discussing three things like I always do. How good is the book? How good is the film? And how well does the film take from the book? Now, there are spoilers ahead, but if anybody hasn't seen Jurassic Park at this point in their life, I don't know what you're doing. You need to go away and watch it. So we'll start first of all with Jurassic Park, the film. So I hadn't actually watched it all the way through until I met my husband about 12 years ago. And I really enjoyed it. So we even ended up, well, I say we, I was reading, he was watching. He ended up watching a sort of like behind the scenes documentary of how Jurassic Park was made and the way that they blended animatronics with CGI and computer graphics and I think that's what CGI stands for, actually. I do apologise. But it was really enjoyable because I must admit, sometimes when you rewatch Jurassic Park, and I do quite regularly and I thoroughly enjoy it, and obviously Jurassic Park is now 6 films, 3 Jurassic Parks, 3 Jurassic Worlds. But when you rewatch the first one, there are some bits that you can tell and it's a little aged, but there are other bits, like the T-Rex looks so good. And I really, really enjoy the film. So it follows sort of like Hammond and the Doctor, Dr. Sattler, and Dr. Grant and Ian Malcolm as they come to sign off on this Jurassic Park where Mr. Hammond has basically been able to clone dino DNA and create these dinosaurs, like these living dinosaurs. But what they've also done as well is they've also interspersed the dino DNA with reptilian DNA, so with like frogs and things like that. So, I mean, the famous line is "Life will find a way," and it does. And of course, to be fair though, when you're watching the film, you do think, especially when Dennis Nedry sort of like turns everything off, you do wonder if it had if he hadn't have done that, would it have all gone to you know, I can't swear, but would it have all gone wrong? Who knows? But it is honestly, it's so iconic a film, and it spawned a generation of films. And despite the fact that it was made in 1993, like the plot and the casting and everything kind of just stands the test of time. And I love the idea of like, you know, having a dinosaur park, and it just, the music as well, like honestly, like you hear a piece of music and you go, that's Jurassic Park. Like it's such a fantastic film. I thoroughly enjoy it every time I watch it. I think it's quite funny how it follows, you know, these doctors that have been called to sign off on the park because they're archaeologists and they dig up like the bones of dinosaurs, and now they're having to sign off on whether or not these actual dinosaurs could live. And they're like, well, you know, I deal with the deceased ones, so I'm not 100% sure. But it's always an interesting, I mean, Ian Malcolm's character is sort of like he's a mathematician, and he's looking and he's going, just because you can, should you? And I think that's a really interesting point, and I think a lot of people need to think about that a lot more, especially in like today's world. Just because you can do it, should you do it really? But yeah, so the film 100% gets a 9 out of 10 for me. Now, it would be a 10 out of 10, but as I said, some of the CGI is a little bit dated, which is understandable considering when it came out. But sometimes when you're rewatching it, you can kind of go, and it sometimes takes you out of the film only a tiny bit. But 100%, if you haven't watched it, watch it. So the book. Now, the book I only actually recently I only recently bought it sort of like this year. And it was one that was kind of always on my radar, but I was like, you know what, I'll give it a read. Like I like doing book to film adaptations, and I'll see, you know, and somebody else asked me to do it, so I was like, do you know what, I'll do it. And I really enjoyed it. And I know I sound surprised, but before, when I've loved a film so much and then I've gone to try and read the book, I haven't enjoyed the book because the film is so good in my eyes that I can't enjoy it. I mean, like Devil Wears Prada, I love the film and I genuinely gave up on reading the book. I could not read the book. I gave it to secondhand. Die Hard, you know, Nothing Lasts Forever, like the Die Hard film, phenomenal, love it, watch it every Christmas, it's a Christmas film. But the book, when I read it, I was like, oh, it's just, and I thought that, and I was worried that that was going to happen with Jurassic Park because I love the film. And I actually really enjoyed the book as well. And I thought it was really interesting because it still follows similar characters. And again, we will discuss sort of like the differences because there are quite a few. But I love how it follows these characters. And even though you're sort of like dealing with, you know, dinosaurs in a park, and you've got these characters that are despicable. Some of them are literally just money grabbing, being like, well, we need to do this. It just grabbed me, and I really enjoyed it. And I enjoyed following the plot, and I enjoyed sort of like the conclusion, and like the fact that the T-Rex in the book follows the children and Dr. Grant as they're going through Jurassic Park trying to get back to the main headquarters. And like again in the book as well, it's not mentioned in the film, and I'll discuss it in a bit more detail. In the book, you have more raptors, like you have a lot more raptors, and they even have like a nesting site where it's like hundreds of raptors, and I love it, and I love all of it, and I love the hubris of, because like there's a bit where it's like, okay, well you're counting and none of the animals have escaped. However, have you changed the parameters to count more? Because if they're breeding, then the computer's only going to find the amount of animals that they want, and then they're going to stop counting. Have you set it higher? And they set it higher, and it finds loads more dinosaurs. And I love the idea that everyone's kind of going, well, it's not my job. I just do this. I just do that, and it just everything beautifully, car crash, fantastic. But it's just, I really enjoyed it. I love the writing style. I definitely sort of like, it took me a while to get into it, only because at the point when I started reading, I had something else going on in my life, and so I didn't have as much time for reading at that point. So when I did finally sort of go, right, okay, this is my day off, I'm just going to sit down and I'm just going to get into it. And as soon as I got a couple chapters in, I was just hooked, and I was like, right, okay, I'm making dedicated time to read it each day. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I read it in about a week, which normally a book of this size would take me less, but as I said, I was quite busy in my actual life. But I'd recommend it to anybody, and it gets a 9 out of 10 because I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, it'd probably get higher, but I just feel like the whole not my job thing, although I loved it in the book, I was a bit like, come on guys. So let's go through the plot. So spoiler alert, if anybody's, not seen the film, or if they want to read the book with blinkers on, you're absolutely fine. So there is a lot that's different. So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to go into great detail about the plot, because I feel like a lot of you kind of know what's going on. So the book has a lot more characters in it on the island. So they have a good couple more characters. They also changed the children in the film. So they make Tim younger and they make Lex older, whereas in the book, obviously, Tim's the older brother, and then you've got the younger sister. You've still got Dr. Grant, Dr. Sattler, Ian Malcolm, and Hammond, and they still go to Jurassic Park. But in the book, it begins sort of like with, I don't know if anyone's seen the second Jurassic Park film, where the child gets attacked on the beach by these like little dinosaurs. By the way, I'm not going to try, apart from T-Rex and Raptor, I'm not going to try and pronounce any other dinosaur names. I know I can't do it. So let's just say that now. But anyway, so they get like bit by these little dinosaur things, and this happens in this first book. And then it goes away to be investigated, and then that gets then put over to Dr. Grant, but Dr. Grant's now on Jurassic Park, and it's sort of things like that. So it has a lot more build up to the park, whereas in the film you get the raptor dragging this person in, and then it cuts to like the lawyers and stuff like that. So they all go out to the island. The animals are pretty much the same. Hammond's trying to convince everybody to sign off on this park, to say that it's going to be absolutely fine. You've got Dennis Nedry, who's the computer guy, who's basically he's sold out because he needs the money, and so he set a trapdoor to be able to go and steal the embryos. So that's all the same. They They do have sort of like a lot more buildings and a lot more park and a lot more dinosaurs in the book than they do in the film. But again, because of the time that the film's made, I understand why they didn't do as many dinosaurs, because obviously costing, it probably wasn't going to work out. So, you know, you've still got sort of like the finding out of the DNA. You've still got people going away, you know, going off into the little park. You know, because of Dennis, who puts everything down, the T-Rex escapes and attacks and kills someone, and then the kids are on the run with Dr. Grant. Malcolm ends up back at home base. But as like in the book, the T-Rex is a lot more determined. The T-Rex follows those kids and Dr. Grant the whole way. Like, the T-Rex does not give up. And as I said, there's a lot more raptors as well in the book than there is in the film. But you get sort of like them trying to bring the power back on. But also in the book, which is an underlying kind of fear, is you've got Tim, who's the kid, noticed that there was a raptor on board this ship that was going to the mainland. And so they're trying, while all of this is going on, they're trying to get and call and recall this ship to make sure that it doesn't land with a raptor. But yeah, so you've also got, you know, so while they're escaping and Dr. Grant's looking after the kids, you've got Ellie Sattler, Dr. Sattler back at HQ with Hammond being like, what are you doing? Malcolm slowly dying from a wound that he got from the T-Rex. You have a lot more baby dinosaurs as well in the books than you do in the film. They also sort of like, so as it goes through and night turns to day, you know, everyone ends up reconvening, turning back on the electric, getting attacked by multiple dinosaurs at multiple points, and the deaths are so different. So Hammond dies, he gets eaten by tiny little scavenger dinosaurs. Malcolm supposedly dies as well in this book. It's kind of hinted that he might die, and the book ends with the National Guard basically coming in and saving them, the people that are left over. Oh, also Dr. Wu dies as well in this book, but in the film he stays alive because obviously we see him later on in the film series. I say Dr. Malcolm supposedly dies because I'm pretty sure he's in the next book. Like, I'm 99% sure, but it seems like a lot more happens in the book, and there's a lot more baby dinosaurs, and there's a lot more tracking, and a lot more people die, and they get rescued by the National Guard, and the raptor nest, which is filled with hundreds of baby raptors, gets blown up. Dennis gets killed. That's the same. And it's just, I can understand why the film didn't take as much from the book as it should have done, but the film ends with that iconic sort of like T-Rex destroying the remaining two raptors, and then roaring loudly as the banner falls, saying dinosaurs ruled the earth. It's fantastic. And then obviously it ends with them going off the island being like, yeah, we survived. So you've got that. Like, as I said, there's loads more people in the book than there are in the film, and so there's a lot more deaths in the book than there are in the film. There's a lot more dinosaurs in the book than there are in the film. The deaths are slightly different as well. The people that survive are slightly different. You still get the main ones like Grant, Sattler, and the two children. They survive in both the book and the film. I could understand why they didn't take as much from the book, but they took the basics. But overall, you know, it gets a 5 out of 10 from me for the adaptation, because obviously they did miss a lot. And they changed the children. I don't understand why they changed the children around. You know, having one younger and one older, that made no sense. Just keep them the same way around that they are in the book. Anyway. But I mean, both are thoroughly enjoyable narratives, very enjoyable in their own right, and I think I'm going to continue reading the series, and I'll be interested to sort of see how the next book goes, considering that Dr. Malcolm is dead. I honestly don't think he is. It's so hinted at. It's like, oh yeah, no, Malcolm didn't make it, and you're like, but did he though? Because like in the film series, he's still alive all the way through. But then I'm like, but Hammond died in the book and stayed alive in the film, and Wu died in the book but stayed alive in the film. And I'm like, so could they have done the same with Malcolm? But we'll see what happens. Anyway, if you enjoy, and if you decide to give it a read, and if you enjoy it, please leave it below in the comments. Thank you very much for your continued support. Our subscriber list is slowly growing. So share with friends and family and let everybody know sort of like how enjoyable it is. And if there are any book to film adaptations you'd like me to do, any books that you'd like me to recommend, please just remember that I do film these episodes quite a while in advance. So a couple of the episodes that I filmed that are going out in like December, I filmed in November. So please remember that. So if you are recommending me a book or a book to film adaptation, I will get to it. It is on my list. I will end up reading it and I will end up reviewing it. Okay, so I promise that if you do recommend it, I'm not ignoring you. But thank you so much for your continued support, and remember to always keep it contento.